All right, welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're going to talk about a force so powerful, it literally redrew the map of Europe and really shaped the entire modern world. We're talking about nationalism.
Now, for so many of you, this is going to be super familiar. We're basically mastering Chapter 1 of your NCERT textbook. And you know how crucial this is, right? It's a huge deal for your Class 10 boards and for anyone prepping for the UPSC exams. We're going to unpack how this one big idea, nationalism, popped up and completely changed everything, creating the very countries we see on the map today.
All right, so here's our game plan. First, we'll look at how this all started, as a dream. Then we'll see how the French Revolution lit the fuse. We'll follow Napoleon as he kind of spreads the idea all over Europe, and then we'll get into the big fight between the revolutionaries and the old-school rulers. After that, we'll see how Germany and Italy were actually forged. And finally, we'll touch on the darker side of nationalism. Let's get into it.
So, where does a story like this even begin? Well, you might think it starts with a big battle or a treaty, but no, it actually starts with an artist's dream, a vision for a totally new kind of world that, believe me, sets the stage for everything.
Okay, take a look at this. This painting from 1848 by a French artist, Frédéric Soriot, is just incredible. I mean, this was a wild dream back then. You've got all these different people from across Europe marching together as their own nations, right? Each one has its own unique flag, its own costume, and they're all marching past the Statue of Liberty. And check out what's on the ground, the shattered pieces of crowns and symbols of the old kings. This wasn't real, not yet anyway. It was this beautiful utopian idea of a world without kings, a world of free people.
And what this whole vision was aiming for was something totally new called the nation-state. Now, you have to get this concept because it's a huge deal. It was a massive shift, right? You go from being just a subject of some random king or queen to being a citizen who shares a common identity, a common history, a common culture with millions of other people. It's a total game changer.
Okay, so a dream is one thing, but how do you make it real? How does it jump off the canvas and into the streets? Well, the first big spark, the one that really got the fire going, was lit in France. The French Revolution in 1789, this was the moment. For the very first time in Europe, a revolution basically stood up and said, hey, you know what? Power doesn't come from some king who claims God is on his side. Power comes from us, the people. The idea was that the people are the nation, and they get to decide what happens next. But think about it. How do you get millions of people who live in different regions, maybe speak different dialects, to suddenly feel like they're all part of one big family? Well, the French revolutionaries were pretty smart about this. They came up with a whole toolkit. They introduced these powerful ideas like la patrie, the fatherland, and le citoyen, the citizen. They got a new flag, the tricolor we all know. They centralized the government, created the same laws for everyone, got rid of internal taxes, and pushed one language, French, to unite everybody. It was a full-on project to build a national identity from the ground up. All right, now for a big plot twist. The guy who ends up spreading all these revolutionary ideas across Europe isn't a revolutionary at all. He's an emperor. And his name, of course, is Napoleon. And this is the crazy thing about Napoleon. I mean, the guy basically destroyed democracy in France and made himself emperor. But as his armies marched across Europe, they brought with them his Napoleonic Code. And this thing was a bombshell. It got rid of all the special treatment nobles got just for being born. It made everyone equal in the eyes of the law. It got rid of the whole feudal system. So you have this emperor who is, weirdly enough, spreading some of the most revolutionary ideas around. So what did people in the conquered lands think about all this? Well, it was a mixed bag, to say the least. At first, a lot of places were like, hooray, the French are here. They're getting rid of our terrible old rulers. They were seen as harbingers of liberty. But that honeymoon phase didn't last long. Pretty soon, people realized that liberty also meant paying higher taxes to France, having your mail read, and, being forced to join the French army. So that initial enthusiasm, it soured pretty quickly. So Napoleon is finally defeated in 1815. You might think, okay, story's over. But nope, not even close. His defeat just kicks off the next phase, a massive continent-wide struggle. On one side, you have the old-school kings and emperors, the conservatives, desperately trying to put things back the way they were. And on the other, you have these new forces of liberalism and nationalism pushing for change.
Okay, exam takers, this is a great slide to pay attention to, maybe even screenshot it. It really shows you the back and forth of this whole era. See? You've got the Napoleonic Wars starting in 1797, spreading all these new ideas. Then, bam, 1815, Napoleon falls, and the conservatives try to shut it all down at the Congress of Vienna. But the idea's already out there. You see it pop up in the Greek fight for independence in 1821. The pressure just keeps building and building until, boom, 1848. Revolutions erupt all across Europe. This is the timeline of that struggle. So that Congress of Vienna in 1815, think of it as the old guard's attempt to put the genie back in the bottle. After they beat Napoleon, all the old kings and princes got together, led by this super conservative Austrian chancellor named Metternich. And their whole goal was simple: turn back the clock. They wanted to pretend the French Revolution never happened, put all the old royal families back on their thrones, and squash these dangerous new ideas of liberty and nations for good.
Okay, so we keep using this term liberal nationalists. But who were these people really? And what did liberalism even mean back then? It's not exactly what we might think of today. What did it mean to the new, educated middle-class folks who were really driving this movement? It basically boiled down to two things. Politically, it meant getting rid of all powerful kings. They wanted a government based on the consent of the people, with a constitution and basic rights. Then there was the economic side. These were business people, merchants, professionals. They were tired of all the crazy tariffs and customs barriers every few miles. They wanted freedom for markets, a single economic zone where goods could move freely. A great example of this is the Zollverein, a customs union formed in the German states in 1834 that did exactly that.
And all this tension just explodes in 1848. It's a massive wave of uprisings all over Europe. The liberal middle classes are in the streets demanding exactly what we just talked about: constitutions and national unification. The Frankfurt Parliament is a perfect example. German liberals all gathered together trying to create a united constitutional Germany. Now, spoiler alert, most of these revolutions failed. The conservatives crushed them. But, and this is a big but, it proved one thing for sure. The old way of doing things was finished. The idea of the nation wasn't going anywhere. Which brings us to our climax, because now the dream is finally going to become reality. Germany and Italy are about to be born. But here's the twist. It's not going to be the liberal revolutionaries in the streets who make it happen. Oh no, it's going to be forged with something much harder: cold, hard state power, clever diplomacy, and war. Let's start with Germany. After the liberals failed in 1848, the powerful Kingdom of Prussia took charge, and leaning Prussia was its chief minister, a guy you've probably heard of, Otto von Bismarck. He basically said, look, we're not going to unify Germany with speeches and votes. We're going to do it with blood and iron. And he wasn't kidding. He led Prussia through 3 short, decisive wars. And just like that, by 1871, Germany was a unified empire. This was a whole new brand of nationalism, not from the people up, but from the state down. Now, Italy's story is a bit different. It's more like a team effort. You kind of needed 4 key ingredients. You had the soul, the dreamer, Giuseppe Mazzini, who inspired everyone with the idea of a united Italy. Then you had the brain, the clever politician, Cavour, who made all the smart diplomatic deals. You had the sword, the swashbuckling hero, Giuseppe Garibaldi, who led his volunteer army to victory. And finally, you had the crown, King Victor Emmanuel II, who became the figurehead for the whole new nation. It took all of them to make Italy a reality. Okay, so we've seen nationalism create new countries and free people from old empires. It seems like a pretty positive force, right? Well, in our final section, we're going to see the flip side of the coin. Because as the 19th century wore on, this powerful idea started to take a much, much darker turn. So what happened? That early idealistic nationalism started to morph into something narrow and ugly. It went from being about us and our liberty to being about us versus them. Nationalist groups became super intolerant of each other. The whole mindset shifted from we want to be a free nation to our nation is the best and we're going to dominate everyone else. This aggressive attitude got mixed up with imperialism, with countries fighting over colonies, and it turned regions like the Balkans into an absolute powder keg just waiting to explode, which it did in 1914 with the start of the First World War. But did it have to be this way? Was aggressive, competitive nationalism the only option? A French philosopher named Ernst Renan didn't think so. He came up with this really beautiful idea. He said a nation isn't about having a common race or language. He said it's a daily plebiscite. What does that mean? It's like a vote that happens every single day. It's the choice we all make
every morning to live together, to cooperate, and to build something together. It's an act of will, not just a fact of history.
And that really brings us right back to today, doesn't it? In our own complicated, globalized world, what does it mean for us to choose our nation every day? This incredible idea born out of an artist's dream and forged in the revolutions of 19th century Europe is still with us. It's still shaping our lives. And what it means for the future? Well, that's a question we're all still trying to answer. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.